Well, all right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome to the Monterey Bay Aquarium live here on Twitch. I hope that you can hear us right now. My name is Emily. I am part of the social media team here at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for being here today. As always, today I am joined by my friend, coworker, and colleague Patrick. Although you'll notice that he's not joining us in the stream as Rick Etz right now. Having a bit of technical difficulties on that end, but hey, Patrick, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Emily. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, Rick Etz decided to sleep in and crashed his account over on Punnery Row Island. So we'll check in with Rick Etz at some other point, but you'll be hearing the disembodied voice of yours truly here on the stream with you, Emily, which is just as good because that way people can watch the pro level moves and not
I
watch
don't
me
know
lose all of
about
my
that.
clothing live on stream like happened last time.
See, but Patrick, I came prepared this time, and I put a whole bunch of clothes in my inventory to give to you. So
Goodness,
we were ready for that disaster to happen again.
Yeah, Rick Etz over on Punnery Row is just too busy recreating the Cannery Row of John Steinbeck over on the island to actually figure out how to play the game that we're meant to be streaming. But that's what you've come to expect here from the Monterey Bay Aquarium streaming Animal Crossing.
It's never
is a whole bunch of information and low-level gameplay, or at least from me.
No, it's true. I'm just looking at the stream right now. I thought I had fixed the color in it, and the color is off again. So I'm giving up on everything today right now, Patrick.
Listen, we're here. People are subbing. We've got Cass 314.
People are subbing.
Just subbed on Twitch Prime.
Muffins
it can only go up from here.
No, Muffins did point out a very good thing is that all my flowers and my pears are safe right now. So
it's very true. It's very true. I'm not going to run through anything or steal anything this particular stream. Oh my goodness, there's a hype train incoming.
Oh my gosh, again.
Oh.
This is
and you know what's really exciting about that is that, Emily, we have emotes.
We do. Emotes. Yes. So all of the folks who have already subscribed and the new subscribers, you're going to have wonderful emotes to use in chat. I saw a lot of people already using them, and I'm very excited about it. We had 6 of the 7 emotes approved, so we got to fix the 7th one there.
Of course, it's the one I made.
6 of the 7. No, you made the puns one. You made...
that's true. I just was really excited for the U-Jelly.
We had U-Jelly.
Emotes there.
Yeah.
But Emily, we should point out, I mean, we've got a hype train going. I just learned what that was last time. I'm still not exactly sure, but we're keeping it going. Celestina's rating with a party of 2. These are a whole bunch of words that I'm sure that our guest who's joining us today is also rather curious about because joining us is an expert in his world. And is going to be telling us a whole lot about the natural world. And that's what I'll be here to do. And Emily, you'll be here to make sure that that the game runs smoothly. Oh, there it is. It's up on screen. We've got the graphic.
We do. We have Dr. Floyd Shockley joining us from the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Hey, Dr. Floyd, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. Really excited to get a chance to explore. As I told you guys, I'm a little new to Animal Crossing, but I've been studying up a little bit, and I'm excited to do a little adventuring and see what bugs we can catch.
Yes, we are very excited to have you here, especially because it's a brand new month. It is May. Happy May the 4th to all of you right now who are watching.
May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, Floyd.
Happy Star Wars Day.
Happy
Absolutely,
Star Wars
and careful,
Day.
Tomorrow's the revenge of the 5th, as we all know, so make sure to... Oh my goodness! Look at Emily, just the hype train going for Dr. Floyd coming in. We've got
this is so exciting.
Scene is gifting subs left and right.
Oh my
gosh! Going out of style.
Look at that!
Incredible!
So
Thank
much
you so much,
hype.
everyone.
That's so
Dr.
exciting.
Floyd, everyone's so excited to see you here.
Yes.
Like I said, it's great to be here. I'm excited to see what we find, and I'm excited to talk with folks about what we might find. So.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, it's a new month. It's May the 4th, but at May the 1st, there was a brand new drop of bugs in the game. In particular, we got a couple new beetle species. So, I was going to bring you to my little beetle area over here on the side, and I actually see a beetle that I haven't caught yet. So I'm going to very sneakily try.
Uh-oh.
And oh no! I hit run instead
Oh, it
of
definitely
sneak.
sees you.
Yes. I just want to point out that the epic gamer moments that I usually provide on stream have translated directly through the power of the Mola Mola shirt that you're wearing there, Emily. Wearing the Mola shirt has given you all of my gaming skills, and I'm so glad to have seen that
it was
occur.
just it's
This
gonna
is
be one of those
fantastic. Everyone,
afternoons.
let's get some F's in the
For
chat.
that beetle, the loss of the
That's
beetle.
that's not a very bad rendering of exactly what happens half the time you're going after a beetle.
So it feels pretty. I was just, trying to do, collections justice right there.
Oh, that was legit. That was legit.
So this is my little beetle area. I call it that because I have my little stumps over here. So I don't know, Floyd, if you can talk about what it is like to go out there and to collect beetles in the wild, and kind of what that experience is like.
Sure. Well, it's also kind of tough just to talk about beetles as if they're one thing. They're the most diverse group of animals on Earth. And so, it's not sort of a one size fits all when you go to collect. Some you collect at lights, and some you collect with a net, and some you have to beat out of the vegetation, and some you have to actually dig out a bark or, sift through grass. And so there's lots of different ways that we collect beetles. In the game, you're probably going to only collect a small subset of 3 or 4 different sort of styles. Now, if you're careful, this is a pretty good one.
All right, I'm gonna very slowly, unlike last time where I ran. I was so excited about this beetle. I'm gonna very, very slowly sneak up on it now.
Let's
there
see it,
we
Emily.
go. I did
Let's see
it.
it.
I did it.
Nicely done,
Yay.
everybody. Let's get some W's in the chat now. Way to go, Emily. Look at that. Citrus longhorned beetle there. Dr. Floyd, what can you tell us about this beautiful, beautiful specimen?
So these guys are obviously they're an Asian species, and they're actually related to something we have here in North America, an invasive species, the Asian longhorn beetle. The larvae of those guys live in under the bark and in the wood of trees, and where they're boring around and they're feeding on the inside of the tree. And then the adults basically just come out long enough to mate and find another tree that their larvae can grow in, and then they basically die after that. So they spend most of their life as larvae feeding on the inside of trees, and they're feeding on live trees, and they feed on a lot of different kinds, hardwoods, but the citrus longhorn also attacks citrus, which is very strange because that's a very different kind of tree than most of the hardwoods that we're used to. So
actually, I have I don't know if you're an expert in this as well, but can you expand a little bit on that? Because we have hardwood trees in game, and we also have citrus trees. Like I have my little orange tree. Oh no! Now I'm destroying flowers. What a mess! What a mess this afternoon.
I live on. I still am in the stream.
Yeah, Patrick is haunting me.
go.
Yeah, Ricketts is haunting me in
the
the stream
spirit
right
of
now.
Ricketts lives on Monterey Bay Island. That's right, chat. You can't get rid of me.
Oh no! I've got that Patrick energy today.
Exactly right. Wanton disregard for the natural world in an attempt to appreciate it. That is my brand. On Animal Crossing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you were about to ask me a question.
Yeah, I was about to ask you a question. So we have...
And then everything just went sideways.
It did. So, for example here, these are hardwood trees that I have growing over here. You can see no fruit whatsoever on them. And then back here I have a couple of orange trees going. You mentioned that hardwood is very different from a citrus tree, the wood that we would find in a citrus tree. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Well, just differences in the the bark, differences in the xylem and phloem, the tissues that transmit water and nutrients between the soil and the canopy. Those are quite different, and they're structured a little bit differently in hardwoods. But what remains the same is that sort of yummy tissue in the middle, and that's what those beetles are really feeding on. And if you get them in high enough numbers, then it starts to disrupt the flow of fluid and food for the tree.
Oh, wow. So I'm familiar with some of those kind of, well, the beetles that would invade trees. We got another beetle. Okay, hold on. We'll talk about that in a second. First, we got to catch this beetle over here. All right. Let's get our sneaking action on
This
again.
is one of my favorite
Oh,
beetles, by the way.
no.
This one here.
Oh, no. Once again.
That's a.
Ugh.
Emily, you just need to learn to go with the phloem there.
Oh,
on
that
those
was a
particular
good
ones.
one.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Nailed it.
Oh,
First
no, I don't know
puns.
if I didn't reset the pun count. Hold on. I got to go do that. I can multitask. It's a thing.
We got the puns emote going in the chat. My legacy is secure. This is
Yeah, that's
amazing.
a beautiful Chrysocroa. Those guys, the larvae on those also feed inside wood. They're a little bit different than the longhorn beetles. They're in a completely different family. These are buprestids. And Chrysocroa is an Asian species as well. And what's interesting is, as you can see, the shiny elytra. The common name for this family are jewel beetles, and it's pretty obvious why that is. But they actually, those elytra are often used decoratively. You can make jewelry out of them. They've been used in ceremonial garments as well as small altars. So there's a lot of sort of admiration for that particular species of beetle.
Which kind of makes sense. I know that, beetles, and in particular beetle art, is a very, very kind of popular medium, especially over in Japan, which makes sense with this game being developed by Nintendo. So that's really interesting. What exactly is in the beetles that causes those beautiful colors?
Good question. So one of the things that a lot of people just assume is like birds and things, that it's done with pigments. But in most beetles, colors like that, especially those iridescent colors, is structural. It's built into the elytra by layering layers of air and photonic crystals in order to create sort of that refractive coloration. And part of that is believed to be, some of it is aposematic, to tell things that, maybe I don't taste great. And then others have speculated that it's about helping them blend in, helping them get ignored, actually. Because these guys hang out in, a lot of the iridescent species actually hang out where there's a lot of rainfall, so there's a lot of standing water. And so you get that iridescence often in those habitats, and so it helps them blend in with their environment, or it tells other animals, maybe you don't want to eat me.
Wow.
I just want to point out that, Floyd, that particular discussion there of the coloration of beetles got us over the hype train bump through the tunnel out to the other side and to the station. So many people subscribing to see more of this kind of beetle chat, and just wanted to point out, Floyd, that just
terrible beetle catching action.
Oh, that would have been a good one too.
I know. That's okay, because I have found another one for you here. Kind of a popular one, a common, a beetle for the people, if you will.
There you go.
a commoner's beetle.
A commoner's beetle. But probably a beetle that not many people know is a beetle, because they know it by another name of ladybug.
That's right. So yeah, a lot of people misuse that. They're not bugs, they're beetles. And lady beetles or ladybugs, whichever you want to call them, are fantastic, and they're also fantastically savage. These guys are the lions of the beetles. I mean, they're running around. They will eat anything that they can catch and hold. They particularly like running around in flowery areas like you have there, where they eat
Hey.
aphids and other insects on the flowers. Um, the coloration tells you I taste kind of bad, and if that doesn't dissuade you, they also reflexively bleed from their joints, and it smells bad. But they're incredibly important biological control for a lot of pest insects. And if you'll allow me to take an aside,
Yes, of
ladybugs
course.
actually get their name from the oh, look at that, an agrius.
Yeah,
Oh,
we can talk about that in a second. It
Oh
was
yeah.
just it was
okay.
No, no,
flying
no. I mean,
around and I needed to
we
catch
should
it.
ask.
Yeah. I
Yeah, I
got
mean, we
another
should just ask
ladybug for us though.
So yeah,
we should
so
just ask the chat real quick, Floyd. We should just ask the chat if they'll allow an aside into this. I think
I
I think
I
they
think
will,
they'll be
but
that's
okay.
fine.
I
Yeah.
think they'll
I think
be
we'll be
okay with
okay.
it.
What do you think, everybody? Do you want to learn more about the ladybugs? Just want to check in
The
and see
lions of the beetle world,
the
which is my
lions of
new
the beetle
favorite thing
world.
about ladybugs.
Okay, yeah, no, just wanted to check in, Floyd. You're good to go.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
totally
So
fine. Yeah.
so
Go for it.
it's interesting. These guys are almost entirely predators, right? And they're embedded in a whole bunch of different kind of beetles evolutionarily that eat fungus. So they're very different than their most close relatives. But I wanted to mention why they're called ladybugs. So ladybugs is actually a reference to the Virgin Mary. And so some of the original names of the ladybugs in Europe refer to Mary. And so this one in particular, the reason I brought that up, this is the seven spotted ladybug. And because of the seven spots, it's tied to Mary and the seven joys and seven sorrows that she experienced. And so now it's the lady part is literally talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Wow.
Wow.
So
I
it's
had
a
no
it's a
idea.
it's a religious tie-in, but it's a beautiful little story. So
I
I
was
wanted to share that.
I was
No.
not taught about that when I
No.
when I went to Catholic school. No.
No, I've never
I
heard
think
that
I would
either.
have.
That
Yeah.
just adds a whole nother level to it. Obviously, that these bugs, which they are not, and I kind of want to expand on that, Floyd, too. Um, but
Sure.
that these bugs have been around for a very long time, and so people all throughout history and different times have also interacted with very much the same cast of critters too. So just thinking about all the bugs that we're seeing here, and it looks like we got a water strider of some kind there.
Yeah, I was gonna grab
The
that.
just we look at these bugs, and these have been a part of people's lives for a very, very long time. Okay, we've got a pond skater. Um, uh,
Nice.
and Floyd, can you please describe for the folks, because they're you said that beetles are not bugs. Can you tell
Yes.
us, for an insect expert like yourself, what makes a bug, what does not make a bug? We know that it's a catch-all for blathers, but what is a bug?
Ah, great. Yeah. So it first off, everyone does it. I've even been known to do it myself. But bugs are a very specific thing, ranging from, the public will often include things like worms and snails and slugs, and those aren't insects at all. Anything small and slimy or fast ends up getting called a bug. But bugs are actually a specific group of insects. So all bugs are insects, but not all insects are bugs. So bugs are in the order Hemiptera. That's the only ones that are true bugs. It actually includes what you're holding there, Emily. Water
Yay.
striders are a true bug, as are cicadas, stink bugs. Those are all true bugs. Assassin bugs are true bugs. And they're characterized by some morphological features related to their wings. That's actually why Hemiptera has that name, is it means half wing. So there's a feature that you can't unfortunately see in the game, But in real life, it's very easy to see that feature in the forewings to give them that sort of half wing appearance. But what really is the catcher is these guys all have piercing, sucking mouth parts on the underneath side. So most of them are either predators or plant feeders, and so when they're feeding, they stick those mouth parts into another insect or into a plant. And if it's another insect, say, it's injecting digestive enzymes as well as toxins to kill it so that they can eat it. And in the case of plants, they're usually just sucking the fluid in, and they're macerating the tissue so that they can drink it.
That's
All right.
amazing. I
There
love
you
that.
go. Now you know.
Now we know. Now we know the difference. So you mentioned that this little pond skater here is a true bug. Do you have any fun facts about our pond skater friend? I like that
Well,
it's
I
waving
think
its little hands.
the one thing that they do that almost everybody knows what a water strider does, but very few people know how they do it. Now, this particular species is actually one of the larger ones that exist. It's Aquarius. They tend to be a little on the big side for non-marine arthropods. And for these guys, the thing that's interesting is you'll notice that they've got a very thin body and great big long legs, and that's pretty typical of water striders. And the reason that's interesting is just like if you can imagine a boat with oars. So these guys, they have a very narrow body profile, and the underside of the body and the legs are all in very fine hairs. They're called hydrophobic hairs that allow them then to sit directly on top of the water. And so no matter how hard you try, it's really hard to capsize one of these guys because they distribute their weight across those long legs and then along that long skinny body. And so it basically makes them almost tip proof. But even if they do get submerged, they carry air with them in those hairs, and it pops them back up like a bobber when you go fishing.
That's a great description. I love that. Yeah, little.
And
it's really hard to drown a water strider, is all I'm saying.
And that is as it should be from a developmental standpoint. That is incredible, and it actually reminds me of just the fact that these animals are walking across the surface of the water, and how at certain scales water and just life in general, depending on how big you are, how fast you move, things feel different or look different than how we might experience them in our everyday lives. And I'm just reminded of the fact that the pond skater walks around with the surface tension of the water with those hydrophobic hairs you were mentioning. In the ocean, we have what Blathers would also call bugs, but arthropods like a copepod that is hanging out in the water that has loads of hairs on its antennae and the rest of its body to increase its surface area. They can kind of tuck in or expand and stick in the water, because at the size of a copepod, the water is much more like a molasses, a very viscous fluid. It can kind of almost walk through, and it can definitely just stop and sit in the water and kind of hang out with the water molecules around it. Whereas to us and to larger animals, we experience water as something that we definitely have to swim through unless we start sinking through it. So just a very interesting fact about how bugs and insects and all these smaller animals that we find in our oceans, they experience something as fundamental as water in a very, very different way than we do as the liquid that we drink or that we swim in. For some of them, it's literally a hard surface that they can walk on, or a molasses that they can stick inside of and move along with.
Mm-hmm.
Just reminding me of that.
Well, and I would like to point out that water striders are the only truly marine group. There aren't a lot, but there are several species, especially in the genus Hadrobates, that live obligately way out at sea. They don't come to land at any life stage. They're living out there on debris, and they complete their entire life cycle out in the middle of the ocean.
That's incredible.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now we know.
I didn't know that there was a truly marine
and we've
species like that.
a lot of people very excited in the chat, Emily and Floyd, about Tony Hawk's Pond Skater
Yeah.
going on. So we definitely need the special trick sound and.
Oh yeah, I should. Yeah, we'll work on getting those sound effects for next time there.
Absolutely.
All right.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
And-
Pardon me. I was just getting some stuff ready for us in
Oh, no
OBS
worries. And
for future bug talk.
And Floyd, pond skaters, not a beetle, right? Can you remind us who they might be closely related to?
Actually, these guys are much more closely related to the assassin bugs and the stink bugs than they are to beetles or anything else.
Gotcha.
All right.
Okay.
Yep.
Right on.
And I'd actually put them closer to. I mean, they're in a different superfamily, but I don't want to get too deep into that. But they're definitely more related to the assassin bugs. And what people don't realize is these guys are highly efficient predators. They're running around eating other invertebrates on the water surface.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, I'm just gonna drop some stuff out of my inventory that I was gonna
all the clothes
gift,
that you were
yeah,
hoping
that I would. Yeah, I was prepared for for your nudity there, Patrick.
This is so sweet, Emily. It is also incredibly embarrassing for my Floyd. So just to explain what happened on the last stream, I was told to use this wand that you can use to change your clothes very quickly. I was told to use that to be able to put on a shirt that Emily made for me. And I had forgotten that I had no clothes on underneath the wand. And so when I undid the disguise, I was just standing there in skivvies live on stream and had no idea how to do it. So this is Emily compensating as the amazing
I may have
friend that she is.
overcompensated, but
if Emily and I were ever going on a road trip, she would be packing 17 different pairs of shoes in case I forgot my one. So
we're definitely going to come back here and pick all this stuff up, though.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course.
We're making a mess of the beach. I'm hoping that tiger beetle comes back.
I know.
Yeah.
We'll definitely.
Let's go.
Let's see if any more beetles have appeared on my stumps over here.
No, tiger
nope,
beetles are
no
actually
beetles over there
attracted to yard sales on the beach. In
As-
Spain, so it'll work
Little
out.
known fact about tiger beetles. Yes. All right, I'm just checking the
and
river
this is,
over
you know,
here.
that kind of habitat is actually really great for a lot of different kind of beetles, not just the wood boring beetles that you've found so far, but that's actually a very common trick that we use when we're hunting fungus beetles is you find a stump and you cut a thin layer off the top of the stump, and you take the sawdust and you mix it with a little bit of beer and molasses, and then you put the thing back on, and then you come back in a couple of days and you can aspirate a whole bunch of different kinds of fungus beetles
Now,
off of there.
what is it about the beer and molasses that attracts them?
It's actually the fermentation.
Okay.
The yeast that begins to break that stuff down is what they're actually attracted to. And so that's you can actually bait outside of your house with that. Little bit of fruit juice and a little bit of beer. Throw some yeast in there, and you'll get tons of cool beetles.
And
that's really
cool. When you zoom in on the beetles, are they all wearing little beanies and thick-rimmed glasses and talking about the latest band? Or
are they a fan of the whole sourdough starter revival that is happening
yes,
right
they
now?
Are. I've used sourdough actually. So
well, that's good to know. I've got some sourdough starter here. I can use that for bread and beetles.
Yeah,
let's talk about the great purple emperor, because this was another one of the brand new bugs that just came out this month.
So this is Sasakia chironda, the great purple emperor. It's a pretty common butterfly. It's not rare in its habitat, but it's really beautiful. It's got the distinctive bandings that you kind of see in a lot of the nymphalids, especially in this game. And a little tidbit: Sasakia is actually Japan's national butterfly.
Oh wow!
Yep,
I had no idea.
Yep, that is the national butterfly of Japan, right there.
Now, so that's the national butterfly of Japan, and pardon me because I've never even thought about that. Do we have a national butterfly here in America?
Ooh.
We do not.
Well,
Oh, let's
Although
get it going.
Yeah.
Let's get it going.
there's
Let's get the
lots of
petition
there's
going
lots of
now.
there's lots of state butterflies, and it'd be easy for me to
Okay.
say, well, it's going to be one of like two or three, right? Um, the monarch butterfly is incredibly common. Tiger swallowtails are incredibly common, and then there's also fritillaries, which are incredibly common as state butterflies. But nobody has actually agreed on the national butterfly.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we're particularly fond of monarchs here in
We'll take 'em,
California,
yes.
but
Yeah, we
that'll
have,
be our vote. I think
yeah,
we're
I'm
biased,
The
though.
monarchs aren't out yet, right? They don't come out for a little bit longer.
No, yeah. So we usually see them on their migration in the winter. That's when we're spotting the monarchs here in California. We have Pacific Grove, which the aquarium actually where it's built. We actually straddle the line between Monterey and Pacific Grove, but Pacific Grove is Butterfly Town, USA.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, just a few blocks from me is one of the butterfly sanctuaries in
Yeah.
Pacific Grove here. So we know the Monarch Festival very well. There's actually a little parade that usually goes by in front of my house here, Floyd, where a lot of the local school kids walk around in butterfly costumes there of the Monarch as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
We're pro butterfly. We're
We
pro
are,
leptopteris here.
Especially the fact that those monarch butterflies that we have here, as far as I understand, there are 3 different generations of monarch butterfly that are needed to complete the whole migration of monarch butterflies, because they're here in the U.S., but they also have major zones down in Mexico where they're very common, and they're the same animals that are going, I believe, Emily, maybe you know, all the way up to Canada and on into Mexico, and it's 3 different generations that have to complete the full loop.
Yeah.
Is that right?
As far as
Yes, that is right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just
Perfect.
like, you shouldn't
Nailed
be
it.
asking me that.
You know,
I'm gonna say, yeah,
what
I
is
think so.
interesting, though, is the same ones that fly down to Mexico fly back. So they
Mhm.
get into the U.S.,
Oh.
they begin a generation, and then that generation goes north, has a generation, and then it comes back.
Wow.
That's incredible.
amazing.
Yeah.
So the same generation flies all the way down and flies all the way back.
Yeah, I
Which
guess
is
I was trying
amazing.
to confirm with you, Emily, before I went to Floyd, but then I remembered he's on the same call.
Yeah,
so
he's
he could hear us the whole time.
He
Yeah.
can hear our uncertainty.
Yeah, just don't make.
Well, when she went, I just assumed step in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we definitely thank you so much for all of that knowledge there, Floyd. Just one thing, we talked about this previously. We're talking about different individual insects here as Emily continues to just go on a tear there, finding all of the local bugs in this game. But maybe one thing that a lot of people might be wondering, besides just learning about bugs and what they what they are individually, what is the role of bugdom on our living planet here? Bugs are pretty much crucial for life as we know it on our planet, right?
Well, let's make it clear. It's not our planet; it's their planet.
There you go. Yep. Thank you.
So
sorry. My apologies to our bug overlords.
Just based on diversity alone, with about 1.2 million described species, maybe as many as 5 to 30 million estimated. And then even if you just look at biomass. So here's an interesting factoid. I used this earlier today. So there's about 10 quintillion insects alive on Earth at any one moment. So that's 10 followed by 18 zeros, right? So if you divide that by the 7.5 billion roughly people, that means that there's 1.3 billion insects for every single human on Earth.
Wow.
That's
So,
insane.
as I said, it's kind of it's an invertebrates world. If you need, because we do need to acknowledge that there's some groups that
Yes.
are also mega diverse, but we're never going to describe them all. Some of the worms, like the nematodes and things. I saw someone post something over there. You got to acknowledge we don't know, but it's for right now, just based on described species, insects rule the world. And actually, E.O.
Wow.
Wilson, who some people may have heard of, often refers to insects as the little things that rule the world.
Wow.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so just because they don't have a massive PR campaign for themselves is why we think that we're the representatives of the planet there. But if an alien were to come down here, probably talk to an insect first to get what's going on our planet, right?
I would certainly think so, and it would probably be a beetle.
There you go.
Yeah. Now
Nice.
that was something else that you mentioned there, Floyd. The number of beetles in the game is actually pretty proportional to the as far as
It's pretty
species
close.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So beetles make up about 40% of all insects, and in the game, it's right around 32%. So that's actually pretty accurate. What ends up getting shortchanged is you've got good representation of butterflies and moths, much to Blather's
his
fear.
dismay. Yeah.
But what isn't, so you don't have very many hymenoptera, ants, bees, and wasps, and you don't have a lot of flies, which is curious.
Mm-hmm.
Because both of those are also really diverse groups. But as far as the beetles and the butterflies and moths, yeah, the makers of the game have really done a good job of sort of matching proportions to the insect diversity, at least as we know it now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in the game, we get one fly, which is fly in the game, and one ant, which is ant in the game. There's
Yep.
no differentiation between those different species there.
Well, soon you're going to get a few more. I think that there's a mosquito that comes in later in the
Ooh.
season. It's not here right now. And you get a wasp. But
Yes, we have
I
our.
think that's. Go ahead.
I was just
Oh,
gonna
no.
say we have our wasps and our bees. Oh no, the bee got away.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when it comes to the wasps, I am one of many people that I'm sure is watching that has an allergic reaction to wasps, or the more common wasp that people refer to as meat bees every so often. And there was a lot of talk about murderous hornets over on Twitter and other places there. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the bad rap that some bugs
Mhm.
end up getting, even though these are defense mechanisms that they have, and just sort of what people who might be watching this are like, oh, I don't know about bugs, they're kind of scary, or they might bite me. What do you generally tell those people about bugs where they might be concerned about them?
Sure. Not surprisingly, almost my entire weekend was consumed with answering questions about. And for those that are following in the chat, this comes after a New York Times article that was published late last week about some giant Asian hornets that were intercepted last summer and into the fall up in Canada and the Pacific Northwest. And first off, let me say that they're not any more dangerous than any other kind of hornet. If you have sensitivity to it, then of course it can be a problem. But they're not overly aggressive to humans, so they're not usually going to cause any kind of a problem for humans. They're bad for honeybees and those who raise honeybees. But that being said, there I'm not exactly sure why the New York Times ran the article now, because all of this happened late last summer, and they have not been intercepted since. So there was one nest and one worker, and they were all destroyed. And so I'm not exactly sure why everyone is going crazy for them now. But my big concern is that with these guys, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to misidentify because it's easy to do. There's a lot of wasps that look kind of similar. They've got yellow and black on them. Some bees have yellow and black on them. Even some beetles and some moths kind of look like these things, and we don't want people just going out and killing insects willy-nilly, because wasps provide an incredibly valuable set of roles in the environment. Some of them are incredibly important pollinators, and many of them are important predators of insects that we consider pests. And so, just going out and killing anything and everything isn't a great strategy, because we're not even sure that it's here. But I do want to put your mind at ease and the mind of ease of everyone that's on the chat that the Washington State Department of Agriculture is closely monitoring now. They're looking for it. They're relatively easy to find, and they're easy to get rid of once you find them. And the USDA is also aware of this. As a matter of fact, not too many people know this, but the initial ID was actually confirmed by one of our staff at the Smithsonian after the initial identification in Washington. So just wanted to put that out there, that don't hate on all the wasps, and you don't even have to hate on these wasps. Where they come from in Asia, they're actually not a huge problem. As a matter of fact, more people die of honeybee stings and the reaction to honeybees than die from being stung by these things. So it's really not a big deal. Murder hornets is a really bad tagline, common name for these things. I prefer just call them the giant Asian hornets.
Whoa. Sorry, I'm just now catching up to the fact that Emily just caught the wasp there. At the same time. Look at that.
I figured we were talking about wasps, that I should go looking for wasps. So first tree that I looked in, we got.
I was gonna say,
got our
how
wasps.
did you know? And also, I've never managed to catch the wasp in time. My net always hits the tree instead of grabbing the wasp. So
there's a trick. All right, very quick pro gamer tip here, Patrick. You got to stand either right here at an angle to it, or right here at an angle to it. If you're all the way on the side, then you'll just end up shaking the tree instead of being in the position to swipe like that.
Let's get some W's in the chat there.
Pro gamer tips so that we can show off our little wasps.
No, thank you, Floyd, for that information, because that was definitely going around in a lot of different people's timelines. I think something else that people might be interested in that was being mentioned is that what most people would consider honeybees are also there's many different types of native bees that most people are probably unaware of being around, and that the honeybee isn't necessarily from around where people might be seeing them, right?
Oh, absolutely. So there is no native apis to North America. Apis is exclusively an Old World genus. So the thing that we all call the honeybee is the European honeybee. It's Apis mellifera, and we brought it here. It was an intentional introduction in the late 1600s. Because we were also bringing crops that were non-native. And one of the things that makes Apis mellifera so valuable is it has really low fidelity to any particular kind of plant. They'll pollinate anything. But that comes at a cost in other ways. So they are particularly susceptible to varroa mites, whereas there are other species of Apis that have more advanced grooming, so that those aren't a problem. And speaking of your murder hornets, the ones that occur,
they're not mine. I need to,
okay, fair enough.
I take no ownership.
The Asian giant hornets, the same bees that live in the vicinity of where those guys are, and as most of you who saw the article probably know, they are pretty bad for honeybees. But in the place where they co-evolve, the honeybees actually have a mechanism by which, when they're attacked by one of the Asian giant hornets, they'll lure it into the nest, and they'll actually sacrifice one worker, just to test it. And if it actually kills it, then they immediately swarm it, and they begin vibrating their wings and their abdomens. And generate metabolic heat, and they will literally cook the hornet alive.
Wow.
Whoa.
And then after it's dead, they drag it out and drop it off the side of the nest. So I'm just saying.
Weaponizing social proximity.
What's that?
Weaponizing social proximity.
That's right. That's right.
Incredible.
So the bees are basically evolved to be able to handle that increased temperature, but the hornet is not, and so it ends up, basically cooking.
You see all these bees arriving next to the hornet in tank tops and short shorts, and the hornet in its winter jacket going, "Oh no." That's amazing.
So we had a good question here in the chat from Celestina. For as someone who is allergic to bees but does not want to kill them, how can they get rid of them safely if they happen to live near a hive?
If you're particularly susceptible, your best bet is actually to not do anything at all, but to call in someone to help you. There's lots of beekeepers around that would be more than happy to come and if you've got a swarm near your home, they'll remove it, because it also helps them add genetic diversity to whatever hives they may have. So it's I wouldn't deal with it yourself. For the most part, as long as you're not sensitive to it, honeybees are incredibly docile and capable of being moved around. They don't quite have the same level of defensive characteristics as some of the paper wasps and things have. You can hold honeybees in your hand as long as you're non-threatening. You're usually just fine.
That's
all
great.
right.
That's
so
good
call
information
in
to
an
know.
expert. Beekeepers would be more than happy to come and help you out.
And something too that was noticed by a few folks there, when the wasp nest landed there, you saw that classic hexagonal shape there, and someone was wondering if that's made out of paper. Could you describe maybe how it is that those wasps and bees are making those nests, and then maybe how they landed on that six-sidedness of it? Was it just they counted their number of legs and they're just like, oh yeah, 6 seems about right? Like, how does that work?
There are some things that scientists don't actually know a lot about. We know that the hexagonal pattern of cells in nests is one of those things that is very common in a lot of the social Hymenoptera. Probably converging on some sort of just a design maximum for they have to house brood in those, and they also have to house food in those, depending on what you're talking about. So in a hornet's nest like that, they're not storing food, they're shoving a caterpillar or a spider or something up in there paralyzed, and they're laying an egg on it, and then the larva will consume it and fill the cell. And I think the shape is it's a very secure shape. It's structurally sound, especially when it's paired with multiple other cells. So it's supported on 2 sides, and it makes it a very firm structure. It needs to hold a lot of weight, but not weigh very much. In wasps, it tends to be made. Calling it paper is probably not fair. It's not really paper.
Okay.
It's sort of a chewed up amalgamation of saliva and wood particles to create that. So it's not true paper like you're thinking of paper, but it has that paper-like consistency. So that's why people call it paper. Now bees, they actually don't use paper. They're making it out of wax that they produce themselves. They have glands that produce wax, and so they're building it basically like a candle. It's a large wax structure, and then they start filling that with both food, that's honey, as well as brood.
Gotcha.
That's awesome.
And Emily, a question for you: is there a pro gamer tip? What can you do with a wasp nest in the game? Anything?
Yeah. So you can. This one's a little bit, not so believable. You can craft medicine with it, Patrick. And
like you can craft an EpiPen.
Yeah, basically you can craft your EpiPen in game.
Okay.
But you can also craft other things. I know that you can make like a wallpaper out of the the wasp's nest in game.
Ooh.
I'm trying to remember what else. There was something that I just saw the other day that you could craft with it, and I'm blanking on what it is. I'm sure that chat knows. Chat is
Beekeeper's hive too.
yeah, I know that. Oh yeah, the beekeeper's hives. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it was that I saw the other day. Yeah, medicine, wallpaper,
Gotcha.
flooring out of it. So not made out of paper, but you can use it to make wallpaper in game.
Yeah. And
So-
Floyd, so well, maybe that leads into a question for you, Floyd. I can imagine that you have probably a lot of different insect-themed articles of clothing or artwork or anything. Is there anything in particular that's your favorite if you're thinking about your favorite insect tributes of either wallpaper or artwork or anything like that you might put in your home? Because in Animal Crossing, decorating your house is definitely a big part of the game. What would you encourage
Well,
the
not.
folks
I
out there?
mean, yeah, not surprisingly, our home is pretty much like a museum. So we've got weird stuff all over the place. We have a preserved bat upstairs. There's a mink at the turn in the stairs. But most of our stuff is actually insect themed. I mean, I have a lot of butterflies and moths and beetles, of course. And in terms of artwork, I don't really collect a huge amount of artwork, but one thing that I am rather fond of is a series of T-shirts made by a fellow coleopterist friend of mine that is it's hard to describe. She basically takes these insect concepts and turns them into almost like a rock T-shirt. So, so there's one that has a strepsipteran on it, which is it's a very small parasitic insect. Most of you have probably never seen or heard of. The common name for the family is the twisted wing parasites, and so she made one that looks like a twisted sister rock T-shirt, but it's got this, it's it's nerd humor, but I love it.
That's
So-
awesome.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
She
Very
also
quick-
recently did one for the mealybug destroyer, which is a kind of ladybug larva, and it's fantastic. Words just don't do it justice.
That's amazing. Emily, we have a
Yes.
request from the chat.
Okay, what's the request?
They would like you to claim your Nook miles because they're getting
I'm
stressed
sorry.
out watching it
I'm
blink.
sorry.
No.
I will
Totally fine. I
absolutely
just
do
wanted
that.
to let's get to a space where you feel like we can. And then they also were requesting that maybe we show Dr. Floyd the Critterpedia as
Yeah.
well before we go into the museum.
Absolutely.
But
can
there you go,
definitely do
chat.
that.
There you go. Okay, see, look, finally. Okay, Froggy Fox, that was just for you. The Mandalee. There you go.
my very empty Critterpedia right now.
Oh, look at that.
I'd
Floyd,
say
what,
like
what
half
is
full. Yeah.
what does this look like to you when you look at the Critterpedia here for the organisms?
Well, first off, I was really surprised. So for those of you on the chat, I got a little preview of Emily's Critterpedia
Mhm.
last week, so I kind of got familiar with what some of these are. But I was really impressed with the number of insects that are in this game. 80. There's 80 of them total. Now, not all of them are all at the same time, but it's really impressive. And a lot of these are things that you have to go to different habitats to find.
Mhm.
You have to collect in a different way. And I think that's one of the things that makes this game so fun, is it really gives an opportunity for folks to be to really be natural historians, right? You got to know what you're looking for, where you're going to find it, how you're going to catch it, and a little bit about it. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I also
Oh,
love all
whoa,
the
look
art.
at that.
in here.
I've never
Yeah.
seen this
This is
menu.
another pro gamer tip, Patrick. Press X when
Whoa.
you're
Wow.
in Critterpedia,
Get outta
and you get these
here.
beautiful scientific illustrations.
Wow. Floyd, what can you tell us about scientific illustration and the display of bugs? I was recently at the Audubon Museum over in New Orleans, looking at the beautiful, beautiful bug art that has been put on display, or insect art of these animals. What is something that maybe people underappreciate in your work of curating natural history collections, and making sure that these animals are given their just show to the rest of the world for how beautiful they are. What is something that people maybe don't understand about what that's like to work with a collection like this?
Well, from the very beginning, you have to kind of understand that not all insects are prepared the same way when they go into a museum. A lot of the Lepidoptera here, you're seeing them laid out as they would actually be in a museum collection, with the wings are spread. I can promise you that no butterfly or moth in the history of the world ever died with its wings flat out beautifully like that. You always have to spread those, and it takes a little bit of skill and expertise. You got to learn how to do it, and it takes a little bit of time. It takes a couple days after you've spread them for them to dry into the position that you want them to be in. And the idea is that you got to get it right the first time, because you don't really want to have to ever touch them again, because they get really brittle, right? And we're in the business of protecting these things basically forever. So we have to make sure that they're really the way we want them. And especially in the case of ones that are going to be turned into an illustration for a book or for a scientific publication, you want it to look really good, because the artist doesn't want to have to touch it either in order to move it. But I can say that, I've been at the museum for 10 years now, so I got to overlap with sort of the last generation of scientific illustrators that did things the old-fashioned way, pen and ink, and then adding layers of color to the illustrations. And then now modern illustrators are doing it all digitally. They're mainly rendering it digital from the beginning. So that being able to kind of see that difference really gives me an appreciation for what the past generations of scientific illustrators were capable of. Some of these illustrations would just blow you away. They look exactly like the specimen itself, and it's a drawing. I mean, I'm a terrible drawer, so I could never do that, and I acknowledge that. But it's really critical that you make sure that these things are spread the right way. In the case of beetles, you want to make sure if there's some feature that you don't like stab through that feature that is needed for identification. And so there's rules about where you stick a pin, how you keep stuff, whether you keep it dry, whether you keep it in fluid. Some of it depends on size, some of it depends on order. The other thing I was going to mention is the game really emphasizes larger things. But if you really wanted to talk about the diversity in insects is in the little brown things.
Okay.
Little brown and black, beetles and parasitoids, and that's where a lot of the diversity is.
And there was someone early in the chat, I forget exactly who it was, but was mentioning where are my micro hymenopterans at? And can you talk about those smaller animals? Oh, looks like Emily is on those now. I'm just now catching up here to the
so
size.
You're on a bit of a delay, yeah.
I mean, so these are some of the smaller ones, and so they're clearly capable of rendering something that's truly small. So you've got the human flea up there. It's right under my emoticon or whatever you've got there. That's Pulex irritans, and that's a pretty small insect. Those guys are only a millimeter or so long. But obviously they're exaggerated for the game, because it'd be crazy. You'd look like a crazy person running around swinging a net at nothing, right? They got to make it, big and
I
obvious.
mean, I do that anyway, Floyd. I don't know if you've seen my gaming lately, but
inspired by the greatest.
Yeah.
But I mean, they clearly have the capability of doing some small things, and insects run the gamut in terms of size. I mean, some of those big leps you've got over in that. On the other part of the Critterpedia, they're nice and big, but I mean, they get much bigger than that. There are walking sticks that are 2 feet long. There are centipedes that are over 1 foot long. So when you've got extreme sizes like that big, and then you have some of these little parasitic wasps, there's a little group. It's called Mimeridae. They're the fairy wasps. And there's a genus, Dicranomorpha, which is so small that it actually is an egg parasitoid of thrips, which are also insects and also incredibly small. So these thrips are only 1 to 2 millimeters long, and these little wasps attack the eggs of those things. So you can imagine how small they are.
Wow.
You can't see them with the naked eye. If you try and aspirate them, you're going to suck them right through the mesh. And so you have to rear them out. They're so small. And they're so tiny that they're actually smaller than single-celled organisms. If you put them side by side, they're smaller than a paramecium.
Whoa.
That's incredible.
Wow.
But, they're super tiny and they're black. And so most people wouldn't find them terribly interesting to look at. So.
Yeah, you really got to think about when you start studying nature, how much the human lens to the world informs how we end up classifying things, or what we end up giving importance to, especially when you consider that 97% of all life doesn't have a backbone, and yet for some reason we've chosen to say, well, there's vertebrates and invertebrates, as if that's some major distinguishing factor, when of course if the insects were writing it, it would be six-legged and non-six-legged, or proboscis or no proboscis, or whatever inter-insect distinction they find to be most interesting, and we would be some outlier the last 2 pages of their textbook with no other information.
Oh yeah. I mean, we might be a couple sentences at the end of the book of life, basically. But no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, just like bite this one at your own peril, and that's pretty much it, I guess. Yeah. Interesting. Emily,
Yes.
I see we're out catching some bugs. Did we want to transition into the museum here? What are you thinking?
The museum. I mean, we still haven't caught that blue beetle out here.
Okay, nope. We're going for the blue beetle.
No, it hasn't spawned
going.
again. It's one of the rarer beetles, so I'm gonna give up on it for now, and we'll come back later.
It's a
and
shame.
see if,
Rosalia is a beautiful beetle.
I
I
know.
was really hoping
I
you were
know.
gonna try and catch one of those tiger beetles, though. I'm not lying, because
Okay.
I wonder. I do have
There's
one
such a-
in my inventory. I
do
did.
you?
I did catch one earlier today. So we could
Let's
talk
see.
about
They
it
are
if we wanted
super hard
to.
to catch.
Yeah, they're very jumpy. And in game here too, they are very jumpy.
So those guys, they're super fast. They're predators as adults and as larvae. But something interesting about tiger beetles is so they actually move so fast that at the moment that they are lunging for prey, or they're racing towards a prey item, they actually are functionally blind, because they're moving faster than the nerve conduction velocity from the optical nerve. So they're temporarily blind. So they're just
Whoa.
racing until their antennae hit something, and then they slam their jaws shut on it.
Whoa. That's
And I just
so
wanted you guys to
rad.
know that.
I so rad.
Boy, that's incredible, and I'm so glad that another animal has converged on my burrito devouring technique, where I see it and I run, and then whatever I hit, I clamp down on. That's incredible. I had no idea.
That just made them even cooler.
So
Oh,
instead
man.
of being blinded by the light, they're blinded by the speed of light.
I suppose you
Sorry.
have to say that. Yeah.
I haven't had a pun in the chat yet there
In a while. Yeah, we
So
had to fix that.
We're only at
Yeah.
4 in a couple of hours. We haven't really
Oof.
been keeping track.
Oof.
Floyd, while we're here, do you have a favorite insect pun?
Oh.
You
I'm
have more than
not
one.
terribly
Go for it.
funny myself.
Okay.
But I tend to leave that to others that are better at it.
Okay. Okay. It was bugging me to ask you, so I just had that.
Hey.
Aha. We call that entrapment, I think. Okay. We got it out there. Thank you for indulging the puns there. The tiger beetle, incredible. And what is it that they're feeding on again? What are they hunting?
Anything and everything.
Okay.
They'll feed on anything small enough that they can subdue.
Okay, wow.
All right. I'm sorry, Patrick. I was just doing a lap there. I was looking for my other favorite beetle in the game here, which we might just have to talk about outside of the museum,
Okay.
or inside of the museum. We can too. But I think it's going to be I think it's probably one of your favorites in the game as well, and it happens to be the one that we made your little avatar on screen of here, Floyd. Our little diving beetle friend. I didn't see any swimming around, but I've got one in my pocket
yeah,
here.
you're not going to really see those guys. They're not on the surface of the water. They're under the water. So if you catch them flying around, then you're pretty lucky. That's actually, I think I mentioned somewhere that that's actually a pretty quality rendering of the genus Cybister. Just the fact that I can tell that it's a Cybister, that's got the typical teardrop shape. It's got the right legs. That's really, really good.
Yeah.
So those guys are also predators. They carry their own bubble of air below the surface of the water so they can hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And their larvae are also voracious predators. They're actually called water tigers. That common name is also applied to some aquatic carabids, but really it's these guys because they'll eat anything. And they actually do something interesting. They will actually sometimes subsocially group together in a pack to take down a prey item that's bigger than they are. And that's kind of weird for most beetles. And they'll only do it, working cooperatively as larvae. So these guys are also edible, just for those interested. This is a species that is commonly consumed. You can eat these guys. I never have, but you can.
Wow. And I just wanted to point out that Emily just then had a photo of some of the diving beetles that we have at the aquarium, where they have basically a little scuba tank that they bring down with them of that bubble of air that hangs out off of the back there. Something for the folks out there probably wondering, how does a bug breathe? Well, they're not breathing in through lungs like us, and so they're carrying that bubble of air down with them, and they're able to get some oxygen while they flit around looking for algae or other things to munch on. We have some of those at the aquarium, and that's what was up on screen there. And yes, Bubble Butt, the song, is a reference to that behavior. And something was lost in translation after that. I think we lost a lot of the biology, but there's that Bubble Butt there.
There's our little scuba beetle.
Yeah.
I also
and it allows them to stay submerged for a long time.
Mm-hmm. We also have a picture here of what some of the larvae look like of those diving beetles.
Yeah, we
so
do.
That's what I was busy trying to load into OBS while we were talking.
There you go.
Clacking away over here. There's our little larvae.
Doesn't that thing look like some sort of a prehistoric dinosaur looking thing? I mean, that thing is that is a keystone predator right there.
Wow. That is really cool. Yeah, I forgot that we even had those there. Something that was asked, can these water beetles also fly still?
Oh my, yes, they're actually really good flyers.
Okay.
Wow.
These guys can travel decent distances, and that's advantageous for them because sometimes the pools that they live in might dry out, and so they can travel good distance. The most common way to actually catch them isn't in the water. It's setting up a blacklight trap, and they'll fly up to the trap, and you collect them there.
Oh, wow. So would you say that this are these some of the only bugs that can do a triathlon?
Oh no, there's other ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see the giant water bug, although I don't know that it's out at this particular time of year. But it is on the list of insects in the game. No, it's supposed to be out. Oh, it's out at night.
They're just out at night. Yeah.
So they can also walk. They can fly. They can swim, and they do the same sort of thing. They carry instead of carrying a little bubble behind them, which is called a plastron, they create a plastron along the underside of their body. So when you'll see them in the water, they've got this sort of a a full length body bubble running along the bottom of their bodies. And that genus also happens to be one of the ones with paternal care. So when the eggs hatch, or when the eggs are laid, they're actually laid on the back of the father, the male, and he protects them from predators until they hatch, and then they're on their own at that point.
Wow.
So, if these bugs were in Hollywood, they wouldn't have a body double so much as a body bubble, is what you were saying.
Absolutely, that is what I'm saying.
It's the most shoehorned pun I could think of, but I wanted to. I got it in there. Had to get those little water beetles off my back. Okay. Awesome.
All right. Should we talk about I did catch one of these earlier, but we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, we should. And someone in chat said that we should call it Stradivarius.
Hey.
Yeah, that's Mormolice. It's the violin beetle. It's also a ground beetle, just like the tiger beetle. Its shape and its color, you can see how you can kind of see through part of the elytra, help it blend in. But these guys are predators, as like most ground beetles are. But the shape actually is designed to allow them to get into nooks and crannies. So you can see they got that long, skinny head, and then that sort of flattened thorax and elytra. And that allows them to get under bark, in cracks and crevices, in stumps and things, where they're eating the larvae of anything they find.
All right.
Right on.
Amazing. And
I actually have a pair of those upstairs. It was a gift mounted on top of a violin concerto in a frame. It's a so I get why people go with the violin beetle.
I get it. Yeah. All right. Well.
And so do you need some kind of a bow made out of horsefly hair to be able to play it, or how does that?
The bow would be made out of hair, right? The string is mounted to the bow. So
okay. All right. So I completely flubbed that pun attempt. It's okay. You miss every shot you don't take. The Michael Jordan documentary was out there. We all learned that you just gotta, you miss a lot of things that you try. I was trying to get in the horse fly. I know that there's horsehair involved there. Anyway, F's in the chat for me there. Yep. Emily is disagreeing with me actively on stream. That's how we find the gold.
I got some new reactions to prepare for the stream.
Oh yeah, that's how we find it. Look at all those F's. I consider that to be love. Thank you, Floyd.
Well, some of those F's may be for me going off on how to make a violin.
No, I appreciate that you took the dive in with me, but you were the only one with an air bubble, a body bubble there. I just sank down to the bottom. G for grown, people are giving us now. I like this. This is great.
This is wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, Emily, save us.
I'm heading into the museum now. Blathers is snoozing on the job, which is good because that means that he doesn't have to hear all this bug chatter that we got going on.
That's right. We won't even let him know what we're doing right now, because this is our second full-blown bug stream.
Yes.
No matter how much he's tried.
We of course have our bench of knowledge.
The bench of forbidden knowledge. Floyd, just so you know,
there.
on the stream that we did with fellow entomologist Dr. Ryan Gott and Emily Grassley of the Field Museum, this was the bench where we discussed the finer details of botflies, tapeworms. But if you felt like revisiting botflies and other animals that maybe burrow into human flesh, this is the time for people to maybe take a break, go grab some water or something. And Floyd, do you have any of those kinds of stories, gruesome parasitic stories? This is the bench where it all happened.
Well, I mean, I've had 2 botflies actually.
You've
myself.
had 2 botflies?
Oh no!
Indeed.
No.
Yeah.
On purpose?
Neither one was on purpose.
Okay.
but I reared them out on purpose.
Yes.
So,
no.
What
and
we're
I
talking about.
I still have
Dedication
them.
right there.
I have the adults, and I have the pupae from my botflies.
Wow.
So yeah, so I'm assuming you covered how botflies get into you, so I don't need to recover that, right?
We covered generally bot flies as something that one should not look up if you were already having a pleasant day. But if you'd
Yeah.
like to go into more detail, this is the time. This is the
Oh,
place.
sure.
This is the bench of forbidden knowledge.
So first off, human botflies prefer other animals. They're suckers for cattle, where they create warbles. But in parts of Central and South America, um, they'll readily feed on us. So, what's interesting about this whole thing is it's intimately tied relationship with another species. So, botflies don't actually land on you. They actually land, or what they do is they're flying around the forest and they find a female mosquito, and it's got to be a female mosquito because male mosquitoes don't feed on blood. As a matter of fact, they don't really feed on much of anything. They just drink nectar. Only the females require a blood meal to make the eggs. So they flying around and they grab these mosquitoes, and as the two of them are tumbling to the ground, because the botfly female is much larger than the mosquito she's captured, she's got to do this quick. So she lays a single egg right in the middle of the legs of the mosquito, and then she lets go, and they go flying off in opposite directions, right? And then the mosquito flies up and lands on you, and when it begins to feed, the body heat, your body heat, actually causes the egg to hatch.
What?
Now, yeah, so the botfly maggot doesn't actually have the right mouth parts to chew its way in. So it's got to find a natural hole in the body. Well, guess what? The mosquito just made that hole. So
what?
So it crawls down through the bite hole of the mosquito, locks in place with its butt sticking up through the hole so it can breathe.
Snorkel butts are back, everybody. Snorkel butts. We talked about them. They're back. Yes. Keep going.
And then it begins eating the tissue underneath. Oh. Now, for those of you who are freaking out, it actually doesn't hurt. Again, I've had these twice, and both times, so they have both an analgesic and an antibiotic property to their saliva. So as they're feeding around, they're releasing this analgesic, so it numbs it. So you don't actually feel pain, but you can feel the movement of the maggot under your skin. Right?
Oh,
yeah. They're triggering physical nerves.
Yep, I can feel my own botfly that I didn't have until you just said that everywhere now. Thank you.
So it basically just keeps eating around under there. Now, if you're nervous about this, if you ever get one, you can actually bait it out. You don't have to try and pull it out. As a matter of fact, it's the worst thing you can do because what you might do is rip it in half, and then you will get an infection. So, but you can bait it out. I kid you not. You can take a piece of beef or a piece of bacon and put it on like a Band-Aid. And it will preferentially turn around and crawl up into the piece of steak. Now, I'll be honest with you, there are much bigger issues if you're walking around a tropical rainforest with a piece of beef strapped to you. You're better off just letting the botfly have a bite, and
because the local leopards are going to be like, oh yeah, no, that's proper first aid. No worries.
So that's what I'm saying. So it takes a couple weeks, and then when it's ready to molt into the adult, it comes back to the hole, and it's kind of a strange thing to watch. There's video of this. If you are enjoying an adult beverage and want to YouTube it, you can see what this thing looks like. So it basically comes back to the hole, and it everts itself. It turns itself inside out through the hole so that you end up with the pupa sitting on the outside of the hole. locked in place by the larval skin. And then about a week later, that pops open and the adult fly emerges. So the first botfly, I only noticed, well, no, it was the second botfly. Second botfly, I noticed only after it had emerged as an adult. I didn't even know I had it until it came out, and it was stuck in my shirt. They couldn't get out, right? So I had my shirt tucked in because, there's ticks and all types of stuff. And the fly was running around inside my shirt.
Oh,
Oh
no.
my Lord.
And that's when I had
no.
someone look, and they were like, "Yeah, you've got a pupa sticking out of the center of your back, right between your shoulder blades." So, and that's where they got me both times, was between the shoulder blades. And it's because, if you get a mosquito back there, you can't smack that spot. Well, I can't. Maybe you can. I can't quite reach that spot directly between my shoulder blades. So that's where I got them both times.
Wow. And so there are so many people in the chat that are asking, how do they avoid that experience at all costs? How do you stay safe from botflies?
Wear lots of mosquito repellent.
And are they found everywhere?
Oh.
No. So there are botflies that exist here in North America. They don't attack humans. They attack other things. There are some that attack cattle. There are some that attack squirrels, domestic animals, dogs and cats. The worst one I ever saw, I know this is a little side thing, but there's a show, The Incredible Dr. Pole. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on one of the cable channels. Anyways, it's this vet up in Michigan. Anyway, they had an episode where a botfly actually got behind the eye of a kitten.
Oh no!
Now the kitten lived. The kitten was fine, but to get it out, they had to sort of pop the eye out, reach in there, get the thing, pull it out, put the eye back in. It was a thing, but it was like amazing because that is exactly where they tend to go if they can't. They'll get into that soft tissue and munch around a little bit.
Floyd, I have to say that you have one-upped every story that has been told on the bench of forbidden knowledge. That's
not even my best story. I mean, guys.
Oh no!
There are scarabs that invade the rectum.
Wait, hold on. I'm intrigued. That sounded like
that's a crossover. Yeah, that's a crossover of our two favorite topics here.
We have people in the chat that are definitely divided on whether or not we should keep going.
There's a lot of cut the feed and please
just
save.
To be clear, it's not my story.
Okay.
This didn't happen to me. It happened in the vicinity of me. So
I don't know if that makes it better.
No.
All right. Go for it. We'll get out of here very soon, everybody.
It's pretty common in tropical parts of Africa where this particular species of dung beetle lives, that people will sleep in the nude because it's hot, it's sweaty, they don't have air conditioning. And if you don't have great hygiene and you have the misfortune of having your bunk near where the restrooms are, then occasionally mistakes are made by this particular species of dung beetle, which is looking for dung to gather, to lay an egg in and rear its young in. And instead it makes a left turn and has been known to invade human rectums. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's an easy one.
That is reminiscent of a few, people out there may have heard of the kangaroo catfish that is found in certain parts of South America that have been known to find their way into the human body via other orifices. So,
that's no joke. Those guys are no joke.
No joke. That was actually one of the first when I visited the California Academy of Sciences ichthyology collection with people. We were very excited to see the coelacanth, and then the kangaroo was brought out in its little vial, and everyone had a bit of a shudder there as well. So something else to not look up, everybody. But that was incredible, Floyd. The bench of forbidden knowledge is the gift that keeps on giving to the world. Emily has gotten 5 or 6 different cold breezes in the last second going by.
I will
But Floyd,
continue.
maybe we can transition away from
Yeah, yeah.
that to the giant water bug that
That's
is currently below
There's
Emily
a
there,
giant
and we can
water
talk
bug.
about.
We got a sunset moth above us. We've got so many bugs going on here.
Yeah, you've got a lot really going on there. That's excellent. So that's a pretty typical position too to find water bugs and water beetles. They'll be head down in the water. Um, that's pretty common, and they're waiting for something yummy to swim by. And these guys, now these are true bugs. So this is a real bug, just like the pond strider there. So these guys have piercing, sucking mouth parts too. So they've got those front legs sticking out there, and they're just waiting basically for something to come by. So there are some species of these that get big enough that they'll actually catch vertebrates. Fish are actually pretty commonly caught by these guys, but there's reports of some of the really large Lithoceros species catching snakes, frogs. Tadpoles are pretty commonly consumed because they're about the same size as fish, but there's even several reports of them taking small birds, ducklings.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're kidding. That's amazing. I mean,
Emily,
as a bird nerd, I'm horrified, but I'm also fascinated as an ecologist. I'm very torn at the moment.
That's amazing.
It has only been reported once or twice, so I don't think birds are normally on the menu. But fish and tadpoles and certainly other insects definitely are.
All right.
Wow.
Well, let's see here.
We've coined the bench, the Bofka, for the bench of forbidden knowledge there, thanks to you, Floyd. Praise Bofka.
That's going to have to be our next emote.
That's
we
our
need
next
a
emote,
bench
for sure.
of forbidden knowledge emote and a nope emote. I saw people request.
Well, look at this. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
welcome. Welcome
this
to
was
our
a question in
little,
the chat there, Floyd. How well do you feel this area to be designed for the bugs that you're seeing?
It's actually pretty well designed. I've seen similar things in real life. There's way too many butterflies in here for the number of plants. They would not be able to. This is really overstocked for a butterfly pavilion or a butterfly house.
All right.
You would see a lot more plants for them to feed on. The other thing is a lot of the times the humidity gets pretty low, and even with a fountain, so you usually have to kind of rein it down, because I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of these things are tropical and Asian.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to want it hot and humid, and you're going to need to put mist on them. But the renderings of the butterflies themselves is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, they're absolutely beautiful to look at.
I'd also like to point out that you have one flying right there over the fountain.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually endangered, just so you know.
Most
of the bird wings are on the CITES endangered list.
Okay.
And it's actually illegal to collect them. You can't even get a permit to collect them.
Oh, no. So Blathers has us doing black market work here, collecting
Blathers
without permits.
Blathers was likely grandfathered in through some kind of weird shenanigans. It's totally fine.
Blathers, come on.
No, we trust that Blathers is an.
Oh, he probably got the right permits. You can get a CITES. You can get a CITES exemption.
There you go.
So.
Yeah, that's right.
He's a natural history museum director. He can do it.
Yeah,
that's right, everybody. Blathers has the proper permits. That's canon. We don't need any more.
No wonder he's
bashing.
Sleeping right now. He must be exhausted trying to get all these permits.
Oh, all the paperwork. Can you imagine?
That is literally the worst part of being a natural history scientist, is the permits and regulations. But we want to make sure that we do things legally. And we also want to make sure that we aren't doing damage to the species when we go and collect.
Mm-hmm.
That's an important thing to keep in mind. This world is populated with plenty of insects, so I'm not too worried about any of them going digitally extinct. But
Something for you, Floyd. Maybe I don't know if you feel like wading into this territory, but every so often there's some kind of news article that comes out saying that butterflies shouldn't be able to fly based off of some. There's always those sort of silly stories that go by about the flight dynamics of these animals. Do you have anything to say about how these animals are able to fly, because they can do so very, very well, especially if you think about the monarch flying for many thousands of miles. What do you have to say if you see those stories of like this insect shouldn't be able to fly, and yet here it is? What do you think about those?
Well, I know that some people have said that about bumblebees, and I do agree that that just doesn't seem feasible. But to be fair, they're not really great flyers. They're kind of they're kind of lazy flyers. They don't land very well. They're cute as a button, but for butterflies, I think it's important to keep in mind that, kind of like birds, the wings don't actually weigh very much. A lot of the tissue there is not live tissue, and so there's not a lot of weight to those wings, and the entire thorax of the body in butterflies, the butterflies aren't running a race with them legs, those little chicken legs. That they put all of their energy into their flight wings, because that's their primary form of locomotion. And so, if you take a butterfly and you open that thorax, it's solid muscle in there. I mean, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger level muscle inside the thorax. And so it's not really hard to envision that they can get some loft. The other thing is that most of the advanced insects, what we're going to call the holometabolists, or the ones that go through metamorphosis like butterflies, they actually have flight mechanisms that help their wings be more efficient. So, it's not like a bird that has to, flap its wings. So it has to think about flapping the muscles each time. They have asynchronous flight muscles that allow those wings to flap without them having to provide sort of the nerve stimulus for it to happen. And that allows them to be extremely efficient. They don't have to put a lot of energy into it.
Gotcha.
Wow.
And we've had a few questions here going by as well. Some other
Sure.
things in the news. What can you tell us about the reports of insect populations globally really suffering with climate change and other disruptions since we've been keeping track of what's going on with those populations?
Well, I think there wasn't a lot of attention until about a year ago, when a German study published sort of a long-term analysis of insect diversity, and it shown a 70% reduction in flying insects. Now, wow, that's important from a variety of standpoints, and I think most of us in the entomology community thought, well, that's a little depressing, but also took into account that it's so just because flying insects decline doesn't mean that all insects are declining. And so most of us were like, well, we need to watch this and we need to study it. But this is certainly alarming. And I think more importantly, now multiple studies have found the same thing. We're finding that it's not necessarily sampling bias. A lot of insects don't fly a lot, so you wouldn't catch those in those kind of surveys. And it's also important to note that when insect species decline, that doesn't mean that all insects are reacting the same way. So it's not like you get 100% turnover. When some insects disappear, other insects move into those niches and exploit them. In times when insect species are declining, pest species and invasive species tend to do really well. So some of those are gonna still be fine, if not get more dense in terms of population densities. So just important to kind of keep that perspective. But yes, the science is suggesting that there is a general decline in total number of insects. It hasn't necessarily played out evenly distributed across insect diversity. So not all insects are struggling. And it's also probably not fair to just lay it on climate change, although that certainly is probably a major factor because of the way insects develop. But habitat fragmentation, modification of the environment, just disruption of the ecosystem when we run a road through there, right? The forest on either side is perfectly fine, but maybe we've created a barrier to some species. That's the kind of things that we also have to take into account as sort of human influences on natural ecosystems. So it's a blend of both, and it is something that we're very, very closely watching. And unfortunately, we don't know. It's also sort of I've said this before when I was asked. It's kind of a misnomer to call it the insect apocalypse because it sounds like it's done, right? Apocalypse is a thing and it happened, and then you are post-apocalyptic. It's still happening. So we're in the middle of a decline in insect diversity. We don't know how long it's going to go. We don't know how bad it's going to get. And we don't know if there's anything we can do to arrest it, to slow it, or to reverse it. That's certainly something that scientists are working on, but we just don't know how much we don't know. If that makes any sense.
It totally does. And we had another question go by earlier with this, kind of scary news of the decline of insects and not knowing really what the future looks like there. And of course, we have the Queen Alexandria's birdwing in here in game. That's an endangered species. Is there anything that we can do for the birdwings or insects in general to help their populations right now?
Well, ironically enough, there's some anecdotal evidence that insects are doing as well as they've done in a generation, because everyone's inside, no one's outside, and no one's building skyscrapers, and no one's disrupting ecosystems, and so there's been an adjustment even in the last 2 months, with some things actually doing a little bit better. We're gonna have to some of these species we're gonna have to use regulations to help them because their populations are already too low. There are some species. A great example of a success is the Lord Howe's stick insect. It's an incredibly rare and endangered thing. Only lives in a very small habitat. And we've actually been able to successfully bring that species back through breeding programs and conservation programs. It's likely gonna make it as long as we keep it up. So those are some things we can do. We can, try and design conservation-minded restoration projects for those groups that are critically endangered.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a good reminder of the power that our community has when we work together towards a goal like that, when we have people supporting the scientists and supporting those conservation programs, that we can see populations recover. We can see, how resilient nature can be if we're there to just give it a lending hand or lending antennae, lending wing, lending
lending hydrophobic
proboscis,
water strider hairs.
Give it a tarsus.
Yeah. All right.
Amazing. Well, I've just been looking at so many people here in the chat. I also hopped over to Twitter there just for a second. People are saying that they're studying for exams, and listening to this is reminding them of a whole bunch of different things that they are looking into.
Right.
So thank you so
finals
much.
Time right now. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, a lot of people learning so much about bugs. Many people also mentioning that they would prefer to have known about the bofka before eating ahead of time. So now that we know that, now we're inside here.
Yes, we
A whole lot
are.
of fun.
I just got very excited, Patrick, because I
Yes.
hadn't actually gone into the museum since I caught this buddy here.
Who is it?
It's, an animal that's very familiar to me. I grew up in Arizona. For those of you who are new to
Oh.
this stream, and for you, Floyd. So I'm an Arizona native. So when these appeared in game on May 1st, I had a very visceral reaction to
Well,
them.
yeah, of course.
However, they are pretty fascinating animals. So I don't know if you have any fun facts about scorpions or anything that you'd like to say about them.
Oh,
We've
sure.
got our
I mean,
little
gosh,
scorpion friend hiding here.
Yeah, scorpions are a favorite of mine. The one thing I would say is that particular scorpion is in the wrong habitat.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
so that's a forest
Oh
scorpion.
no.
Oh
It's
no!
not a desert
Oh,
scorpion.
blathers.
You
So
heard
it
it
would
here
be
first,
much more
everybody.
comfortable in that cage next to it. So that's a forest scorpion. The dark color kind of tells you black on the sand is not a great strategy. So
No, it's not.
those guys tend to live in forests. And they're actually not terribly toxic. The more nasty ones are actually small and sort of brown.
Yep.
But for those guys, and if we can find it, we can zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll go to
Yeah, there we go.
Critterpedia
So,
here. Yeah.
interestingly enough, even though it's got a big, impressive sting, the sting is actually pretty low toxicity. It's about like a bee sting, and it goes away in 15 or 20 minutes. It hurts because you're getting stabbed by that large thing.
As most
But they
stabbings,
actually,
yeah.
Yeah.
most of the time, they actually don't even envenomate you. They just give you a dry sting. Because these guys don't actually hunt with their venom. You can see they also have those great big claws. In general, in scorpions, if you see a great big pair of claws, that tends to be a little bit more likely to be a low toxicity because it's using those giant claws to tear its prey apart alive. So it's just grabbing it and ripping it off and eating it like a drumstick.
Whoa.
Until it eats the whole insect or whatever.
Oh.
And they very rarely use the sting to hunt. It's mainly for defense. And so if you see those big claws, it tends to be something that is a little more docile and it's a little bit less likely to sting.
Mhm.
Another interesting thing about these guys is that so the exoskeleton of these guys isn't built like insects. It does have chitin in it, just like insects have, but it's got additional layers, and those layers actually capture other forms of light, in particular UV. And because of that, all scorpions, that's all species in the world, are incredibly sensitive to sunlight. Most of them will die if you put them in direct sunlight and they can't go and hide somewhere. They like to be like sunlight adjacent so they can be warm, but they don't want the sunlight directly on them. And the reason is because the UV penetrates the outer layers and it gets caught under the extra internal layers of the exoskeleton. And so if you put it in the sun, they'll basically roast. They'll cook alive because there's nowhere for the heat to dissipate, right? It's in there and it just begins to build up until they cook. But what's the reason I was telling all of that story wasn't because I'm wanting people to go out and kill scorpions, but if you want to go out and collect scorpions or see scorpions, you can take advantage of that particular trait because it causes all scorpions in the world to fluoresce under blacklight.
Yes.
Yep.
So if you have a portable blacklight, which I have in my field kit, and you're walking out in the forest at night and you shine it and you see anything glowing back at you, it's a scorpion because spiders and insects don't typically glow under blacklight. So
there we go.
Yep. That's actually a pro tip.
And you can see lots of cool pictures of that online. and it's super easy to do, and it actually it does it whether they're dead or alive. So you take a dead one out of a jar at the museum, and they still glow. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
and even more interesting is once a scorpion has touched alcohol, which is what we use to preserve. Alcohol is for spiders, it's for scorpions, a lot of soft-bodied things, and all the immatures are in alcohol. But when you take a scorpion and you put it in alcohol, the alcohol from that moment on also glows under black light.
Oh,
Wow.
whoa.
So if you shine it on a,
Talk
you
about,
shine
yeah.
it on, yeah.
I was
So
gonna say, talk about moonshine then, right?
I
There you
actually I
go.
teed that up for you. I knew you were going to go
There we
there.
go.
Oh, did you now?
There we
Did you
go.
now? You set me up on a path of pun perfection. I really appreciate that. Wow,
You're
that's
welcome.
amazing. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And
I also see someone over here in the chat is mentioning, and I've done this too. UV lights are great in tide pools because there are other
yes.
things that fluoresce when you hit them with black light. So that's
Um,
absolutely true.
I have a question that may not make too much sense yet, but I'm kind of formulating it as I look at these models here. In the ocean, we often have we have a there's a gradient between a crab and a lobster, where you have what would be a true crab, and then you have a squat lobster, and then you have the true lobsters, where you kind of have this unfurling of the tail, and a crab is basically a lobster with its tail tucked underneath its body completely, and a squat lobster is kind of halfway there, and then you get the lobster with the tail completely out. Is there a similar um, is there a similar anatomical gradient uh, between a scorpion to something that has that tail tucked underneath itself? Or I guess where does that tail with the stinger kind of come from or go in the morphology of scorpion relatives?
So actually, it's unique.
Okay.
It's a unique structure within scorpions, but some of their relatives have similar. It's basically a highly modified, articulated uh, medial caudal filament, if you'd like. It's a basically
Okay.
the same thing you've seen vinegaroons, maybe. The
I can look them
tailed,
up.
yeah, whip scorpions, yeah. So with those guys, it's been reduced down to a long, thin filament, and there are other forms of
Oh, okay.
filaments and things that come off of the the back of the abdomen in insects and in other arthropods, but each one is a fairly uniquely derived structure. And so there's nothing quite like the telson of a scorpion
Okay.
in almost
All right.
anything else. Especially once you get out of the arachnids and you move over into the myriapods and the insects, you don't really see the same kind of thing again.
Wow.
Now
Thank
there
you.
are some insects though that will mimic that. They want to look big and scary.
Okay.
Um, some of them do it by curling their abdomen so that they kind of look like a scorpion. There's some walking sticks that do it. There are some beetles that do it. There's one group, the scorpion flies, where males have actually created a similar looking thing. It's just it's coming off of the end of their abdomen, so it's modified abdomen, but it's made to look just like a scorpion stinger.
Wow.
Wow.
Totally independently derived structure and probably some sort of a mimic kind of thing, but you know, we'd have to go back about 500 million years to find out for sure. So
Okay. Well,
All
you
right.
do you, scorpions. That's excellent. What do you that thank you for answering that. That's great.
Yeah.
Emily, what else can we
I
show the people?
We can show them lots of things. I just with all this scorpion talk
Yes.
here, um I just wanted to add it's an animal that you won't see in the game. And you know, if you're a fan of scorpions, maybe cover your ears right now, but in Arizona, you know, where we have like 30 species of scorpions, one of my favorite animals that actually lives there is a grasshopper mouse that is actually resistant to the toxicity, to the venom that scorpions can inject, and they will just go around, grabbing scorpions, and the stings like don't even bother them. You see the scorpions like trying to sting them, and the grasshopper mouse just grabs them and starts chowing down.
Wow.
It's the most, it's the most metal mouse in the entire world, right there.
It's the honey badger of mice.
It really is. It's the honey
Okay.
badger of mice right there. So, in case after you watch the botfly videos later today, and you,
That's right,
you
yeah.
need another video to cheer you up, just Google search grasshopper mice eating scorpions and be prepared to be amazed while you watch these tiny little mice just scurry around and grab a scorpion and just go bonkers on it. So in Animal Crossing,
there's a few different animals that have evolved to go after scorpions, and a lot of them just rip the tail right off, because once you do that, then basically it's a it's like a crab, and you can just crack that open and get to the good meat.
Yeah, you got to think that there's a whole bunch of embarrassed scorpions that are like, haha, oh yeah, no, you saw right through that, didn't you? That happens a lot with the crabs at the aquarium that we feed to the sea otters. The crabs obviously have big claws, big pinchers, and the otters just kind of pick them up and flip them over on their back, and they can't do anything at that point. And then sometimes the otters will even take one of the claws and use that to crack open the crab, which is really insult to injury at that point. And so
that's ripping your arm off and beating you with it, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Why are you hitting yourself? And so the crab has this really great strategy in theory, and then it gets flipped over upside down on the back of its predator, and suddenly it's not looking too smart there. Yeah.
All right. Back to our little tour of the museum here for you, Floyd. Let's see here. What else?
People were, by the way, Emily, very much enjoying the floating tarantula that entire time.
Yeah.
Just bobbing up and down.
Just bobbing up and down right there. I know. It was a delight.
Oh, we got it. What is that? A little orchid mantis?
It is. Here, let me run back there. Zoom in on that, buddy. Zoom in on our orchid mantis friend. Enhance. There we go.
So these guys are really amazing, and that's a pretty good rendering. They hang out around flowers, and they, interestingly enough, they can actually change their colors a little bit, and so they can modify that coloration. Not quite like an octopus can or anything like that, but they can modify that color to match whatever flowers they happen to be on. But they tend to really stick to orchids and flowers that they can kind of wrap their body around to kind of look like the flower. So they'll sit on top of the plant looking like another flower, and then they'll just wait for a really large butterfly or something to come up, and then reach out, grab it, and usually they'll snap those wings right off, and then the rest is basically like eating a coney at the baseball game. They just sort of eat the body and the head, and wait for the next thing.
They're so cool. I love just mantises in general are just the neatest. One of the things in the game that we can actually see it doing right now are those really kind of quick, kind of twitchy head movements. Can you talk about what it's doing there?
Well, so these guys are visual predators. So it's looking for food. It's looking for something moving around in there that it can catch. And mantids also have incredible head dexterity. So I don't know if you've ever tried to catch one of the large Chinese mantids that we have here in the U.S., but they can turn their head almost completely around and they'll stare you down. And they can deliver an unpleasant bite if you mishandle them. They're gentle until they decide not to be, but they're always looking around, looking for prey all the time.
Wow.
Very cool.
Heads on a swivel.
Yep.
That's amazing. And a similar organism, or we have mantis shrimp in the aquarium that people have probably heard about, where they have similar appendages there that are used for capturing their prey. There's a spears and clubbers in the mantis shrimp world there, but a stomatopod, a completely different type of animal, very, very distantly related in arthropoddom from these mantids, but really amazing that that there's a similar convergent evolution there on those appendages being able to do that capturing that they do. Although I do believe that the mantises catch with spikes on those appendages on the inside of the arm, whereas the stomatopods, they have them facing the opposite direction.
That's correct.
So pretty cool.
So they reach out and they're basically swinging those legs down, and they basically impale their prey on the spikes that are on the underneath side, and then they'll rotate them in so that they can eat them. Yep.
Wow.
There's actually a lot of insects and a lot of animals that have developed raptorial forelegs for that very reason.
Really?
Makes it really easy to grab and kill something that you want to eat. Sometimes it's not for food; it's actually for mates. But for the most part, it's for getting some prey.
Gotcha.
So cool. All right.
Awesome. Well, Emily, I'm looking at the time here.
Yeah. It has gone so quickly.
Wow. We've been talking about bugs for 2 hours now, Floyd. Incredible.
It does not feel like it's
not
been
that incredible,
2 hours.
really, but
I was about to say, I do this all day, every day.
All day, every day. Yeah, this is just warm up. This is barely breaking a sweat over here.
Well, and it's important to kind of keep in mind, how many insects are there? How many different species are there? How many different ways do they influence our lives? Interact with us in ecosystems near where we live. So it's not surprising that it would take a long time and way more brain power that I have by myself to study. Oh, I think it was Charles Darwin that said that he was anxiously waiting to meet the person who deserved the title entomologist because there are so many insects.
Oh yeah, wow. Well, and that's quite that's
a paraphrasing, I'm certain.
No, that's quite the gauntlet to throw down from Darwin himself. He famously spent a lot of time looking at bugs and also barnacles.
Nice catch.
It was for you, there. Floyd. I saw it.
Right at the end.
Right at the end. I'm sorry, Patrick, we interrupted you.
Oh, are you kidding me? That was you're going right after Darwin's legacy there, like looking at beetles and barnacles. So many very cool arthropods studied for a very long time, and we're barely scratching the surface. And another violin beetle to play the fiddle. If you have any complaints, that's the one to go to because it's a small violin playing the world song or something. Anyway.
All right.
Well, I mean, I think chat, we did it. Can we get some W's in the chat for Dr. Floyd Shockley for all of that information? Yes. Really raising the bar on the BOFCA.
Really appreciate it, guys.
For the next time. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's been such a delight having you on. Here, for the end of this stream, we're going to hold up our beautiful tiger beetle. Just for you right there. Yeah. I think that was a great way to end the little Darwin talk right there at the very end. Yeah.
Got to bring it back.
That feels right. That feels good.
Well, again, thanks a lot. It's been great, especially getting to get out and collect some insects.
Yes.
So keep at it.
Yeah. Do you have parting words for folks outside of obviously go and follow the Smithsonian on all of their social media channels to keep up with the amazing work that this organization is doing. Floyd, what are some parting thoughts, things that folks can do to help support bug life on our planet?
Well, just having a greater appreciation for them, trying to sort of overlook that fear that a lot of people have, and just appreciating the importance that the little things that rule the world have on all of the ecosystems that we like to go and enjoy. If you like your national parks, if you like to go and visit ponds and streams and things, think an insect, because they're basically supporting the food webs for all of the terrestrial ecosystems. So if this, that's one of the things I love about this game, is because it really does kind of allow people to explore their inner natural historian. You know, be their own little Darwin in their own little part of the world. And just get an appreciation for what's out there. And it's great practice because we're getting into insect season, right? So stuff's waking up, stuff's moving around. And if you just go out and you find one insect and you decide not to squish it, I'd consider that a win.
Oh, well, there you go,
Let it
everybody.
go. Let it be.
Yeah. That's a great message. Well, thank you so much, Floyd. It has been such a delight having you here with us today, talking about bugs, talking about botflies on the bench of forbidden knowledge, the Bafka that we have, catching beetles, and just having a great time. We've loved having you on. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure, and I just can't thank you enough for the work you guys are doing, and really, you know, just the amazing job that you're doing to kind of promote natural history museums, the importance of collecting, why we collect, so that we know what diversity is and we know what they're doing in the ecosystems. And when we get invasive species, we know, you know, when they got here, how they got here, where they might go. All of these things are important from a collection standpoint. And so, you know, working at the largest natural history collection in the world, that's something that we're certainly very, very attuned to. So with that, thanks a lot, and have a great evening, guys.
Oh, well, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Floyd. That was great. Again, for everybody, in the chat, thank you for being there, for all of those great questions. And if we just want to send out more thank yous to Dr. Floyd here on his way out there, that was fantastic.
Lots of otters holding up the 10, one of our new emotes. There
and Floyd. For the folks who are here in the chat, we do have those emotes, Emily. We got them submitted. We'll have more now. We've got some more ideas. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to this Twitch channel during the stream. That was really incredible.
That was amazing to see. Thank you to all of the subscribers so far. It's just been so heartwarming to see how many people are supporting these kinds of streams that, you know, Patrick and I get really excited about. We're so glad that other people are getting excited about them too, and especially since we're closed right now, all those subscriptions are really helping at the moment.
Absolutely.
So we definitely appreciate all of the love and support that we're seeing coming in from the Twitch community right now. It fills us with such immense pride in this community and just joy and love for all of you. So we'll end our streams as we always do with just a reminder to, you know, in these very strange and weird times that we find ourselves in right now, that we hope that you find, you know, joy and wonder in the world that is around you. And we'll keep on trying to do that for you here on stream. But always remember to take time to be kind to yourself. And of course, be kind to each other, be kind to bugs. And we will see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.